Hi, and welcome to the conclusion of the perfect stop smoking strategy. It's just a short video here. More than anything else, it's to either congratulate you for hitting your date, stopping successfully, and moving forward with your life, or to encourage you, which is you're either moving up to that date and getting ready to stop smoking for good, and hopefully armed with a beautiful strategy behind you and all the tools and resources you're going to need. Or it's to encourage you to say, if you have failed, if you have not succeeded, then it's not really a failure, it's just feedback. You're just learning a new way of that didn't work this time. And the best way forward is to actually create a proper plan for your next attempt to stop smoking and to execute it well. Because addiction doesn't stand a chance when you're well prepared. Now I have a little story for you going forward, and I'm actually going to just mute the video or black it off or whatever it is, put a picture on it. And what I'd encourage you to do is just kind of zone out. It's a little story, enjoy the story, and I hope to see you again sometime in the future. And if you do need my services to help you stop smoking or some transformational coaching, do reach out to me. I'm available to help you get over the challenges so that you can lead a better life and become the greatest vision of yourself that you can envision. So have a good one and all the best. Enjoy the story. Now, as I said, I wanted to give you a little gift. And this gift is in the form of a short story that I'd like to narrate to you now. And what would be really beneficial for you would just to be able to relax now in order to enjoy this and enter a more receptive state of relaxation, such that the story creates visualizations and becomes very clear to you, such that you can enjoy it more and more. And the more that you relax, the clearer my voice can become to you. And in doing so, you may find yourself becoming more and more absorbed in the story. If you do feel at any point like closing your eyes, then go ahead and close them now and just listen to the story, drift away, and enjoy it. And now, many years ago, in a small village far away, there lived a young man who felt he did not fit in with the rest of the village. This man, named George, had a secret, you see. His secret was so precious to him, and he kept it so close to his heart, that he always felt a barrier between him and the other villagers. His secret kept him apart. As the years passed, George grew more and more weary of the burden of his secretiveness. He isolated himself, and he became unruly and unclean. He did not bother washing or cleaning after himself. The rest of the village noticed his increasing strangeness, yet nobody wished to come near him because, quite frankly, he smelt offensive, and he looked increasingly insane. They were afraid of him. What's more, their fear of him increased daily. Now one morning George woke up, burdened by what his life had become. He had had enough. He knew he could not continue this way, as his life was not worth living. Yet he still held onto his secret. He didn't, you see, know quite what to do. That morning he sat in his dirty home, his hair unkempt, his clothes dirty. He resolved that he could not continue living this way. He either had to find a solution to his malady, or he knew he would die. But as he contemplated how to resolve his situation, his mind became blank. He found that he did not have the capability to sort this matter out himself, and, in what was perhaps his best moment of clarity, he sought to visit the village oracle. Now, although the oracle served the village, he wasn't easy to come by. He lived, you see, on an isolated mountain pass 2 days' hard trek from the village. So, George prepared himself for the journey and left the next day. He traveled alone, without informing anyone where he was going. Slowly he climbed the dangerous mountain pass and spent the night under the shelter of a ledge. The next day, exhausted from his efforts, he arrived at the door of the oracle's cave. George hesitated. How was he to explain to the oracle what he was going through? As he stood at the cave entrance, deep in thought, a voice called out to him from inside the cave. Hey, you out there! I know you. You're George, aren't you? Now George was surprised and quite perturbed. He had informed nobody of his intentions or his journey. So how could this voice know who he was? Come in, George, the voice continued. Let's discuss this matter that you hold so close to your heart. George was completely dumbfounded. And in the daze of confusion, he entered the dimly lit cave. He approached a circular opening in the cave, which seemed to serve as the oracle's main residence, and he saw there an elderly, bearded man with a blanket draped around his shoulders, seated on the floor. George sat down where the oracle motioned for him to sit, his mind still attempting to become accustomed to this strange scenario. Well, dear George, tell me how I can help you. How do you know my name? Stammered George. That is no concern, George. It is my business to know our village, as it is your business to know who I am. Tell me what you are here to discuss. Well, you see, oh dear Oracle, there's something the matter with me. Something is not right, George said. The oracle laughed a deep belly laugh that seemed to originate out of the depths of the earth itself, as it rumbled here and there around the cave. George's eyes followed the laugh all around him. It seemed to come from, well, everywhere. Dear George, dear boy, smiled the oracle, finally finishing his bout of laughter, while George wondered how red his own face was blushing. There is something the matter with all of us. What you really need to tell me, dear boy, is what it is that you are holding closest to your heart. Now George's breath quickened and he felt a pang of anxiety. Well, I cannot tell you that. I do have something close to my heart, that's correct, but I cannot tell you. I cannot tell anyone. I just need, George continued quickly now, I need you to tell me what to do about it. I cannot tell you what it is. I never will. I've locked it deep inside me, but I want to know what I can do to be okay again. The oracle paused and scrutinized George, who suddenly felt more at ease now that he had stood his ground. Okay then, my boy, I will tell you what to do, but on one condition that you must agree to without fail. What is it? Asked George, expecting the worst. My condition is that if I tell you what it is you need to do, that you must follow my instructions exactly, without fail. You must do exactly what I say, young man." The oracle paused and ran his eyes over George before continuing. "Do you agree to my condition, George?" Now George put his thinking cap on. What were his choices? He could refuse and leave now and go back to his unbearable life again. Or he could take a chance with the oracle. "What's the worst that could happen?" George thought to himself. "Fine," he said with conviction in his voice. "You have a deal." "Excellent," said the oracle. "Now listen very carefully. You said that you have locked something deep inside you." George nodded, signaling his affirmation. "Then you need to find the key," stated the oracle. "What?" said George inquiringly. He didn't follow. "Every lock has a key, dear boy," said the oracle. "That is the purpose of a lock. So you need to find the key to your lock." George nodded as he pondered this, which the oracle took as a sign that he should continue. "In order to find your key, you need to look everywhere. Leave no stone unturned. Search for it everywhere until you find it." But how will I know when I've found it?" asked George, confused. "The key and the lock are made for each other. You will know, young man. Have no doubt about that." With these words ringing in his ear, George thanked the oracle and left. His search for the key began as soon as he left the cave. He looked everywhere as he walked down the trail towards the village. He looked at every tree, turned over every rock, checked inside every cave and crevice. It took him a week to return to the village. Once he returned, he turned his house inside out, searching relentlessly for the key. He tore through the entire village, leaving no stone unturned in his pursuit for the holy grail of the oracle's key. If the villagers had thought that George was strange before, now their opinion was that he was completely insane. They avoided him like the plague as he wandered here and there, muttering and mumbling to himself. After a few weeks of this search, George gave up. Frustrated, disappointed, and quite angry, he returned to the oracle's cave. This time there was no hesitation on his part, and he entered the cave and sat down next to the oracle. Strangely, George observed that the oracle wore a different blanket this time. The patterns were the same, but it was a different color. "Dear oracle," began George, "I mean you no disrespect, but I've searched high and low. I've looked in every tree and inside every cave and under every rock from here to the other end of the village. There is no key to be found. I return here frustrated and empty-handed. I agreed to your condition. You need to tell me what to do. You must help me. I'm going insane." The oracle listened attentively to George, nodding his head while looking at him sympathetically. "So you say that you've looked everywhere in the village?" asked the oracle. Without hesitation, George replied in the affirmative. "You must then have looked in every other villager's house," stated the oracle in a questioning tone. George's eyes glazed over. He hadn't even thought about that. "Well, not exactly," he stumbled forth in weak defense. Then you haven't looked everywhere, have you?" asked the oracle, his eyebrows raised. Without a word, George stood up and left. This time he ran to the village. It only took him a day. He arrived breathless and immediately began his frantic search. The first door he knocked on was his neighbor's. As soon as the door opened, George began talking wildly. I need to come inside. There's a key, you see, and I need to find it. You might have it. I don't know if you do. Maybe you know. I'm not sure. But this key needs to be found. Every lock has a key." And as he continued, he noticed his neighbor's eyes becoming wider, first with concern and then with fear. His neighbor started to close the door on him. "No, no, John, no," said George with an urgency while holding the door ajar by force. "Please listen to me. The oracle has sent me. I need your help." Upon hearing this, John's grip on the door relaxed and he slowly stepped back. "Come in then, George. Since the oracle has sent you, let me know how I can help you." George entered John's neat little house and explained to him, his wife and children, what had happened. He told them about the lock that he had deep inside which needed the key, and how he needed to find the key. John and his family all looked at each other while George hurriedly explained the situation. And then, at one point, they all burst out laughing at once. George stopped, dead in his tracks. What's the matter?" "Oh, sorry," said John. "We don't mean to be rude. It's just that we have all just realized what you were doing these past few weeks when you tore the village apart with your madness. We thought you had completely lost the plot." John could barely speak through fits of laughter. When he heard this, George began laughing too, a loud belly laugh that seemed to come from the depths of the earth and reverberate around John's entire home. John and his family looked around their home amazed, as it seemed that the sound came from, well, everywhere. When the laughter had finally died down, reason prevailed again. "Well then, George," said John's wife, "we shall help you look for this key." All of them began searching the house frantically and carefully, but of course, there was no key to be found. George became despondent and looked distraught. "Don't worry, George," said John. "There's plenty more houses in the village. Come on." And so George and John and John's entire family went to the next neighbor and explained the situation. Once more there was much booming belly laughter and merriment as another neighbor realized the reason for George's madness. And once more another house was searched, with nothing found. Then George and John and John's family and all the people from the other neighbor's house went to the next neighbor. They explained the situation. The heavens boomed with laughter once more, and then another house was searched. This continued on until all the villages were searching, and all the houses had been searched. The entire population of the village finally gathered in the square in the center of the village. "I'm really quite perplexed," said George to John. "We haven't found the key. I'm going back to the oracle right now to ask for an explanation. This is beyond absurd." George was quite angry now. "Calm down there, George," said John. "Besides, it's quite late now. Why don't we all have some dinner and rest up? Tomorrow, we can all go to the oracle together." The rest of the villagers joined in, and with rising community spirit, dinner for all was organized in the village square. The whole village decided to visit the oracle the next day with George to ask about this elusive key. In the meantime, it was time to feast and drink and celebrate this funny day that they had all had. The merriment continued far into the night, and it wasn't until noon the next day that there were sufficient villagers awake to start the trek to the oracle. 2 days later, George stood once more at the entrance to the cave, and this time he entered with as many people as could squeeze into the cave. George took his customary seat next to the oracle. "Hello, everyone," said the oracle in greeting, before turning his attention to George. "So, dear boy, tell me what you have found." "Well, I haven't found a key," stated George indignantly. "Ask them all," he stated. gesticulating a little wildly towards the gathered villagers. Everyone looked for it, but nobody found it. Stated the oracle with his hand on his chin. That's interesting. And did all of you really join George to look for the key to his lock? He asked of the villagers. They all murmured their rumbling consent in unison, as a large gathering does. Well then, George, the situation is most perplexing, said the oracle, deep in thought. George looked at him expectantly. You see, George, said the oracle, every lock must have a key. That is its purpose. George nodded as he followed the oracle's explanation. And if you haven't found the key, then I really need to ask you another question, dear George. The oracle paused, just long enough, as George craned his neck expectantly, awaiting the question. If you can't find the key, and the purpose of the key is to fit the lock, then I must ask you this, George. The oracle paused once more, just a little bit. Can you find the lock? At this point, a very strange expression came across George's face. It was as if he was having an internal explosion in complete silence. He certainly wasn't himself. All eyes in the cave were trained directly on him. Suddenly, George stood up as if he had been struck by lightning. His eyes gleamed with a wild and excited look. There is no lock! He screamed loudly, with his arms in the air and a wild expression on his face. There is no lock! There is no lock! And with that, George began running around the cave, hugging and holding and kissing and jumping up and down with all the villagers. There is no lock! There is no key! No lock! No key! They all left the cave, singing and dancing and celebrating all the way back to the village. George has found his key, you see, and from that day on, his life forever changed. The end. So now I need to ask you a question. Have you found your key?